Hey, everybody, welcome to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McEllis. Before I introduce our sexy, handsome Australian guest, let me just ask each and every one of you to take a moment to hit the like, subscribe, share, comment button. Help Keep It Spiritually Simple algorithms rotate so it lands on your device. So today I have the pleasure talking to Pete Slattery. I had a session with him like 5 years ago, and so much has changed since then. And he's just growing leaps and bounds and expanding and helping the universe here, the universe out there, and each and every one of us kind of awaken and explore. He talks about the UFOs, UAPs. He's an author. He's got a sanctuary in Australia he's going to tell you about, and just whatever's current, Pete's going to jump into. So, welcome, Pete.
Sandra, thanks for having me.
I am so happy you are here. So, tell me, Pete, what the hell is going on right now? We're in 2026, and I don't listen to anybody anymore because there's so many predictions and things that haven't ever occurred. And it also takes me out of the now moment. Spirit told me back in 2019 to be very aware of distractions and to work on my own discernment. So we also know that things change in a blink of an eye. So a lot of these things that people, say will happen don't always occur because, there's so many other factors going on. So tell me what in the world's going on.
That's what I'd like to know, but at the same time, not knowing is good. And what I mean by this is there is a lot happening worldwide, but we're in a situation where over world events the last few years, we could even go over the last few thousand. There are things where there are blinders for a lot of the masses, and these blinders are being pulled off. It does come down to discernment, but it also comes down to a soul journey that we're all on. And to cut to the chase, whether it's with extraterrestrials, spirit guides, even our own journey, what's the fruit in what you say and what you do?
Hmm.
How's it bringing you closer to peace? And there is differences with this. There's a shortcoming where you may glean short-term peace, but sometimes things take a little bit of work to glean that long-term peace. So my thing would be to advise people and reflect on what's bringing them peace because there's a lot of distraction, as you said, and there's free will, and because of that, the way things can be one moment, they can turn on their head the next. So I think when we're focusing on being the best us, which has been the core message from the angels from source, but also extraterrestrial intelligences, that they've really pushed the point to me the last couple of years of us keeping our own sovereignty. That just because some extraterrestrials appear enlightened, they've also got to deal with angels and demons as well, if we want to look at it like that. And they're also a soul fractal of the one intelligence that you and I are a part of as well. They're no better than us. But it is about a grand reunion occurring of a galactic nature and beyond that, but also a spiritual nature. Uh, as what it is for some people, meaning it's more about UAPs or this, that, the other. I seem to sit in the middle of it, and I don't want to be part of any community because I'm experiencing it in the way that I am. My thing is just what's bringing you closer to bringing heaven on earth.
Yeah, and I think that's really super powerful because it takes you into being responsible for your own happy dial, and if we can step out of the way and just allow things to occur and then get our sensories in a way that we feel more aligned with, we can create our own discernment to a way that we know what's working, what's not working, and what's an old program, and how to maybe start from a clean whiteboard, so to speak, and maybe expand from there versus just all the teachings people have placed out that are so distorted. Um, so are we thinking that the extraterrestrials are all here, they're all good, and they're all here to assist us?
It's as much as a mixed bag of what I've experienced is on earth. So there has been extremely dark intelligences that I've come across. We could say even more of a non-physical nature that are beyond extraterrestrial. But it's really a blend. I couldn't put a percentage on it, but the ballpark I say is around 5% are extremely negative. The rest aren't. Most are trying to find their way like us. but the same control mechanism that's orchestrating the cabal, the elite, and structures behind the scene, which are non-physical, they're beyond extraterrestrial. They are using, in some cases, foot soldiers, we could say, to do their work. But the same force, which I go into deeply in my material of the fallen Elohim, there's the positive, then there's the fallen. They are the ones that created the artificial intelligence, which is a distorted form of awareness that once you resonate with it, you sort of become a feeding machine for this. Attachments are a part of that, as well as dark hauntings and demonic influences. But what I'm trying to say here is that the same control mechanism behind the scenes here is also affecting many other worlds as well. And it seems to be that once you get to a certain state of evolution, you can see what's going on and you can rise above it by not being frequency specific for it to lock onto. It's a war that's not of the flesh, but of a resonant frequency of that which we're harmonic with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And as a kid, when I used to stare up at the sky and daydream and see all the planets before I even knew what their names were, I used to think to myself, well, we're not the only ones. We can't be. Why would God make all of this and only put people on this one little ball of whatever, There has to be more out there. And I always paid attention to my innate voice. And of course, my number one communicator was feelings. But, when I was growing up, you weren't allowed to work with feelings. You had to work with your logic. You had to work with your ego. You had to work with what you're supposed to do and override everything else. And I think that we're being turned around right now where we're learning more to work with the feeling frequencies. And what do we sense? Do we sense that there's other life out there? Do we sense a presence around us during the day? Um, you know, Regardless of what that is, because many times it frightens people.
It's a lot to contemplate, especially when you have an experience. It was funny. I was just listening. I was in the truck just going down to the post office, and I had an old episode of Art Bell on the. I've got podcasts. I've been listening to Art Bell for like 20 years non-stop, just in
Mhm.
the truck. And there was a lady talking about an experience where it was just some type of haunting that until one day with one of her children, she was trying to put him in line, and she realized she couldn't. But what was happening was he was responding to some paranormal activity in the home. And then the other sibling said, I saw that too. And then she realized, like, I've been seeing this too. And it's something that we're starting to see this now. But the shock and awe has to sometimes be at a certain level for us to deal with it, is what
Yes.
that's why I brought up the story, because we've got to deal with this. Now, each to their own and their own levels of where everyone's at. But the ridicule that I've gone through over it's over 15 years in the public eye compared to now, there's been a huge change in how people look at this. They've opened up in different ways, but there's still a lot of societies, I have to remind people, that don't know what UAP mean, that don't know that it's being talked about in Congress and in the Senate, and that other governments like ours are even hearing about all this, and of course they know a lot more. And because of that, people aren't where we're at. And what we seem to do sometimes is make things about us because we're seeing things through our own lens. So we've got to remember that people are where they're at. And for some, if not most still, the contemplation of not just life elsewhere, but even if we take extraterrestrials out, at life after death and the implications and the what if, I think that's even more huge than the extraterrestrial reality, because unless you know what you know, like I know what I know, people don't have any ground truth. And those implications affects the way that you treat others, the way that you treat yourselves, what you actually do with your life to leave a mark here and leave the earth better than what it was than when you came in. Otherwise, people are just stuck with the 9 to 5. Like I'm painting this with a broad brush, just trying to pay their frigging taxes and their mortgage and get their kids off to school. And in a way, you can understand that. But what happens is they end up living in lack in that state. And through that lack, they're just on a perpetual cycle of just getting by. And that's part of the control matrix. But we're here, many of us at this time, if not, I actually believe everyone's an experiencer to an extent. We're here to spark that what if in their mind, in whatever area, whether it's got to do with health, healing, spirituality, ETs, religion, whatever it is. All that sparks one thing that's in common: what if, and if true, what's the implications?
So do you think that with the more people stepping off the hamster wheel and getting out of that loop, the loop many of us have been on, that because of all the energies that are hitting the planet right now, our nervous systems are being fine-tuned, which can feel like helter-skelter at times, but our nervous systems are being fine-tuned so that we can see, sense, and feel in a more heightened way. But because it's so unknown to so many, they shut it down and freak it out and think they have anxiety, or they're going crazy. And of course, traditional medicine isn't going to help them. Traditional therapy isn't going to help them. But what would we say to all those people that are kind of waking up and sort of going, I think I've been like this for a long time, but I'm just now realizing, as I step away from the 9 to 5 crazy, crazy schedule, that matrix, how do I land a little softer?
So there's a lot to unpack in that because it's layered, and it's not to complicate things. First thing I would say is even looking at something as simplistic as heart math. People can look at heartmath.com. I don't like I say look at their work. They don't endorse me or anything. They've been doing similar work for many years, and I've done one of those courses. I've got to say that because that's part of their thing. But when we look at heart math now, we know that the heart has its own brain. We also have a gut brain as well, a stomach brain. And something as simple as focusing on the heart and breathing in and out of the heart, even for 2 minutes, starts to bring in. There's a device I've got here, but they've got as well. And many people are using these at conferences. What it brings is heart brain coherence. Now, there's many methods you can implement after that with gratitude, other techniques even for healing that they teach as well as I teach and others, but I've got my own spin on it because I've been doing my own version of heart math for a long time. But as an example, I saw Greg Braden doing a presentation one time, and from what I'm aware, if I remember this correctly, or it might have been Joe Dispenza, I think it was Greg, they're actually teaching not just third world countries, but first responders in the United States how to deal with trauma through heart breathing so they don't go home and bring that trauma from seeing a murder, from being in a fight, whatever it is, home. And people can actually release it in real time extremely quick through what they're registering with these devices. The reason I'm bringing this up is because not only do we have our own traumas and things that we've experienced, we've got ancestral trauma, and that also leads galactically off world to our ancestors off world. There's also an imprint of this that it goes transdimensional as well. As above, so below. We've got a non-physical part of us that makes you you. It's not your body that makes you you. This is the vessel. But there's an essence that's shapeless, that's formless, that's unbounded that makes you you. And when that leaves the body, people can tell when they've seen a loved one pass that's gone. That body's just a body. And so just looking at things in terms of very simplistic breathing things and being present, bringing yourself back to the present, because when you're in the present and being conscious of your thoughts, you can steer your ship. It's a very simplistic thing, but there is a situation that because of the energies coming through, and I'll talk about this just quickly. In the paranormal community and ghost hunting shows, for example, Taps, which is a well-known American show going back 20 something years, they talked about something called a fear cage. Now, predominantly in the United States, yes, elsewhere in the world, if you've got, and I say this because we don't have many basements in Australia in the homes, but if you go into a basement and there's poor wiring or the electricity boards are not covered properly, you're exposed to extremely high EMF in some cases. Now, in some cases, you can get nausea, anxiety, you can hallucinate. There's many health effects that can happen, just like if you're sleeping near a power device that has got high EMF levels. At the moment, the sun is giving off something like that in bursts at a time, and we're being affected in that way without shielding. A way that I term this is almost like ascension codes and data coming through from the sun, because all stars are connected, and there's actually NASA data on tunnels connecting the star to the planetary bodies, but also stars to other stars. There's a network. And I was talking about this many years ago, and we're now seeing that there is one of them are electromagnetic tunnels, the other one is magnetic tunnels, if I remember this correctly. I could be wrong there. But what I've been saying for many years through my own contacts that I can't prove is that all this starts from the central part of the galaxy, and that the center part of this galaxy connects with the center part of all other galaxies. Basically, our stars are like a neuron network, and we're experiencing God's mind, and via the photons and the data, it's projecting this reality that we're experiencing. Now, when that information's coming through, what's happening on these cycles, these yugas, is the crap's going to come up. But it's important to remember, and it's a long way to get back to your question, but I think valid bringing all that up, is there's a fine line between anxiety and excitement. They feel very similar if you're not aware. And if you can look at what's the fruit, meaning is it my heart that's actually excited? Am I going into the unknown, which is where we create, we go down new endeavors, or is it actually anxiety? Is it my heart telling me this isn't right? And you can feel that, like you said before, that's a feeling. But if we can get reacquainted with our heart and with feeling, this can be a lot smoother ride, this ascension process, than what it could be otherwise.
So what we're thinking here is we have more warnings than we realize, and they're interpreted because they've been pre-labeled as something, and it's not necessarily that it is that. For example, excitement can be a warning signal that something you're interpreting as I'm excited, but it's really an underlying, hey, pay attention. You discern it, you figure it out, but let it be a warning to stop, drop, sit, connect with your breath, and become aware something is presenting.
Really good analogy. And just like you could look at those times when you've known who's calling you on the phone without looking at it, to the opposite, which is for some reason I just don't feel like going out today. Like I've just got this feeling, and you can't explain it. And then you find out something tragic could have happened if you went out. The same mechanism, that knowingness, that awareness, by being present with that, there can be much fruit. It's not really problematic. The situation is getting reacquainted with that, but also figuring out your manual, because we all operate slightly differently, and this is where we're all winging it. No one's got the one-stop shop. This is how all the clear senses work. This is how you work. And I think that's part of the beauty of the Earth human experience, is figuring that manual out, uh, with the ups and the downs.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fun. I look at it as like CDs getting, downloaded, and I'm like, okay, that was not working right now. Okay, that's not where I need to be at this moment. Okay, okay. Oh, this one might be okay. So it's a matter of listening. And when you really listen from the inward point of view, the inner DNA versus the exterior world, you see, sense, and feel things very differently. And you begin to fine tune your own dials of, heart happiness. I always said, I wish you had one of those like little Geigers where you could walk in. It's like, warning, warning, annoyance is about to present itself, or, not a good place to be. Back up, leave this building immediately. Don't go any further. I also wonder if right now, because of all this energy hitting the planet, and people's nervous systems, and someone like me who's been fairly awake most of her life, but really been working on it so much more through the last couple decades, I consider myself like ready to take stand with whatever it is that's there, whatever it presents, without the fear. But yesterday I had an experience where I left a client's house, walked to my car, and as I was putting something in my car, in my peripheral, I saw a figure. And because my back was to it, my nervous system naturally jumped a little bit. But I wasn't scared. It just was a startle. But when I turned, there wasn't a soul around. So I knew that it was a being that either had just popped in and said, "Hey, I know she can see me." And so I got in the car and I had a little conversation with Source. And I said, "Okay, I know I said I wanted to see more of that, but let's help me to work on my nervous system so that I can dialogue with or whatever this is, and understand it more without scaring them or scaring myself."
It's a good point, and this is part of what I do at the sanctuary in terms of traveling the world, making contact, doing it in groups, because it's all fine and dandy to want contact or to see more, and I get it. I have to remind people as well. There are people I know that they want this to stop, and they can't stop it because, and it's not that anything negative. They can't live a productive life because they're in both worlds, and that's part of their journey.
Mhm.
But the implications when you're seeing this and the effects, uh, we've seen effects. I've done a lot of work with James Gilliland, who's got the famous ECD Ranch in the United States. And we've seen people hug trees, cry, run out, get in the car and go and never come back. And yet, you know, 5 minutes before the incident, I want to see a saucer right now land right here. And then something occurs and they've got this response. This response I find, and partly getting to the sanctuary and the contact, but yet doing this over the world, is you've got individual contact, but then group contact. And in some cases, I've found when I've done my own house calls over the years, gone to asylums and jails and what have you, sometimes it could have been a residual haunting. It may be something intelligent that's still there. It might have never been human, or it could even be extraterrestrial. And because there's a huge overlap that I found with, just because somebody watched Ghost Hunters, it must be a ghost. Just because I watched UFO Hunters, it's got to be alien. Huge overlap. And this is the part where it gets very convoluted, because sometimes, even though we're all one consciousness interfacing with itself, it actually could even be you. I found in some instances, especially early morning experiences people have, sometimes with sleep paralysis, which can be, if it's got a dark dream before it, it could be an attack. It could be you coming back from an out of body experience. It could even be you coming back from an extraterrestrial vehicle that's landing on your body and resonating you back with the body, because the crafts can be like ghosts. So this is what occurs a lot, but it can also be another aspect of you saying how you respond to an experience, and depending on that will depend if you go to that next depth level of it without judgment, but purely saying how can you respond to this experience. Because if you're not there at the moment, again with no judgment, but it's might be something that's put off for a bit before we give you another even more in-depth experience, because of the way you're responding purely from this. And a lot of these beings see us as light, which is why there's a lot of nighttime stuff. But there's a lot of people that are very tuned in, like yourself. And hey, I still get taken aback with some beings as well. Just because I see all this doesn't mean it's like, hey, I want to have a conversation with every being. But I think it comes back to with being aware that you're aware. And what I mean by that, whether it's with a trauma response or a response with another worldly being like you described, if you can catch yourself with how you're responding in real time and now direct the ship, that's key, and that's self-mastery. And it actually rewires the neuron network in the brain each time you catch yourself. So what happens is you'll start to respond in a new way, whether it's with traumas, triggers, where you could go stage left, yell, upset, cry, depression, anxiety. Hey, I'm triggered right now. I just got taken aback by this being. Observe it, shift the energy in a new direction, a different direction. That builds those new pavement blocks, I say, in the walkway. But it takes that inner work, and part of it might not even be you. It can be a bodily response that does go to ancestral, but it could also be just a human reaction as well. There's that happening quite often for most people. But with the contact thing, this is why I worked out that when you're in groups, it actually helps people to have an experience in a safe manner, because they've got the comfort of other people with them. And it's really good for contactees and experiences and psychics, because now they're with people having an experience where they're usually by themselves and solo. So it's good for the experiences, it's good for the newcomers. And what happens is the newcomers end up taking this away with them and having their experiences, and they were introduced in a safe manner. Otherwise, people are opening up to all these things, and it really can call anything and everything in, which is what we don't want. Even if it's positive, you can have a response like you were describing.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was that morning, I'm not a real big caffeine drinker. I do like an unsweet iced tea and sometimes a cacao in the morning or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But after 1 o'clock, I don't have anything. But yesterday morning, I got the message, no, you're not going to have caffeine today. And I just remember going, okay, however, and then I got in my car and did my thing. And then that occurred. And that also came up. It was like, Sandy needs to get the control dials of the nervous system together because more and more of this is going to present. And so my physical body has to calibrate, and it can't do that when it's getting startled. Because if you startle somebody, your whole energy goes like a taser, you know? And so I mean, I already get that around the Washington, D.C. traffic, but you know, working in the spiritual realm and going through my own self-development by just allowing myself to be the observer and knowing that I'm fully protected. So I have no fear. You know, I also had another really interesting thing later after that happened, that that being came to mind at the end of the day when things settled down. And so I asked, you know, do you want to go back to source? Was it, you know, because people they've come to me before, and I've, you know, worked with the portal of transcendence, and I learned, I'm all self-taught. I've never learned from anybody. This is all self-taught. And so I used to do that. So I asked this being last night when I sat down, I had some quiet time, you know, do you want me to open the port, ask for the portal of transcendence? And I didn't really get an answer, but I said, well, I'm going to open it. And if you choose to go, you can. And it just went gone. Now, a couple hours later, I'm sleeping and I get presented with some kind of energy being that I don't recognize. And I'm standing there by myself. And most people, the normal thing for them to do is start calling upon other beings to help protect them, right? But that wasn't my innate thought. I was like, the God source is within me. I have everything I need here. I do not need to call. However, if you all want to come and give me backup, that's great, but I'm okay in this. And the being came towards me. And at one point I had this trepidation, but then I knew I was okay. And it kind of hit me. And it felt like my whole body went into like pixels. It was weird. My eyes were closed and I thought, gosh, did this being just ram me and I'm dying? And this is what it feels like to get split apart. And then boom, I was back in my body, completely intact. And the being was over there and just looked at me. And I was like, oh, that was just proof to me that I was fully protected. So I know I just went
Multi-
off course there a little bit, but
no, that's
what's your thought on
multi-dimensional
that?
mind. Yeah, like I've had similar experiences where the pixelation has occurred, and it was like multi-dimensional mind breakthrough beyond the
Yes.
human perception. And I think it's important you brought that up because that's a lot of what I do myself. I've done a lot of work again with James, where a lot of things will come to us purely because they're aware that we can see them, but also there is the cases where they do need assistance. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. And sometimes they get on the grapevine, hey, go here or go there, and you might be able to get some assistance going to the other side from what they're hearing. And there's usually a reason. Being extremely, you could say, psychic with the clear senses, you will come across stuff just that will have no reason behind it. Just like you're walking down the street and you see another human. Like there is those situations, but some of the time there's a reason you're having your experience. There's a reason something's in your presence, whether it's prying, you know, it's spying, whether it's even another human or an advanced psychic, psionic, whether human or extraterrestrial, that are spying on you, that are trying to remote influence you, or whether it's negative influences, whether it's even angels or spirit guides or a past loved one. There's a reason behind the experiences, and I think that's important to remember, but not to let it override you being present to figure that out if you don't know what it is sometimes. I think usually we do know what it is via the first thing that comes to mind in our awareness, but sometimes you're just not going to figure it out, and you've got to be okay with that too. But that's multidimensional mind.
Yeah, and then there's also a lot of light consciousness, like they're shaped in colors and different shapes. Those appear to me all the time. And I'm so used to them being in my room, but I think about 2 years ago I was laying in bed and something different came in, and I knew it. I sort of opened my eyes and I looked up and I saw a different shape. And my first inclination, and I am not one of these fearful, skeptical, weird people, I said, I'm being remote viewed. And I just said, you're not welcome here, in my mind. And I just laid there and looked at it and it disappeared. It was almost like, oh shit, she saw us. I'm like, well, I'm in like winter like flannel pajamas. There's nothing sexy to see here, guys. You gotta go.
This is a really good point. I do talk about this because I experience that on a regular basis. And as sad as what I'm about to say is, there are people, whether they're employed by the cabal or covert groups and organizations that are not government, they're beyond that, where people are actually targeted and scoped out with who's got podcasts that are doing spiritual work, that are doing readings. And these people get off on battling and seeing if they can deter people from the path that they're on. And in some cases, what I'd say is to flip the script and see that you're a worthy opponent when that happens, not to be a victim, which is why I call this place Jaya, which means a balance of masculine and feminine. It means self-mastery and it means victory. Because in terms of being victorious and not out of an egotistical way, there is a war going on, and people would be surprised if they knew how advanced some of these humans are. That remote influence, that in some cases take other people's lives, that I can't prove that, but the power of some of these psionics where they'll be given a photo of somebody and there'll be a group of psionics sitting around that, telling that person to kill themselves repeatedly, and they might do that once a day for a year, and eventually somebody cracks. There's actually people that this is their jobs. And this is why it's very important. How many times, and you would have seen this over the many years, how many times have you seen people come into this community? They got some great information, this, that, the other. You never see from them again. And a lot of times I can tell you now, these people have become victims of this because they've come to me and I've seen it over and over. And it's not that they're weak. One thing is they weren't aware of it. Two, they didn't have the tools for it. And three, they just wanted it to stop because it can get really dark really quick. And it's not to go down a dark path with this. My thing is to inform people. But when you're in your authority, when you call upon source, and yes, there's a beautiful many that can assist you in those processes. That stuff, if you can deal with attachments, we could say parasitic thought forms, dark influences and dark entities, you can deal with somebody like that, like that. The when they've got you is if you're not aware of it. But if you're aware of what I'm saying, you're already one way to kicking that out of your room.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to realize their physicality and who they are as this human being. And a lot of people will get real tough when they're in front of you. Oh, I'd never do that. I do this, oh, da, 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 and then they're the opposite. And it's just like when, a solicitor knocks at the door and you answer the door and you're like, then you become putty in their hands. You're so easily influenced because you don't know how to say no. And so there's so many lessons I think that people are being shared right now when they're coming online. What is my constitution? What is really me? What do I like? What do I stand for? How would I be in the face of adversity or some tragic situation? How am I? And if I'm not the way I want to be, how do I train myself? Because we all have muscle memory, so we start practicing and training and becoming what I call the spiritual athlete. We all want to become physical athletes. We want to go work out our bodies. We want to eat right. We want to do this. We want to do that. We want to get away with junk food. But where are we really taking the time to energetically work with that spiritual realm of the core and essence of who we are.
Really good point. Uh, my thing is letting the heart be the compass, as airy fairy as that sounds. I don't try. I was going back to heart math. Like there's a pull that the heart pulls you towards, and I let that be my compass. But the other thing when going into this, there is situations that people see a lot of these things as mistakes, and I prefer to say lessons, unless you
Mhm.
keep repeating something and you're not getting it. But this is where, if you look at the fruit from the situation, like with anything, I think that's what brings things back into a perspective. Whether it's owning something, um, trying to be better today more than what you were yesterday, like even that little tiny bit of movement each day can really help people progress in that spiritual path, as well as letting the heart lead you. I don't think there's again a one-stop answer for that, but again, it comes down to, there are these people that if this happened, I'd respond this way or that way, but it's just not the case. And I feel sorry for those people because they eventually end up having something where they respond in such a way that they reflect on it and go, I should have done this, I should have done that. But unless you're in somebody's shoes, you can't really judge what to do unless it's you experiencing it.
Mhm. But most of us come off of automatic responses because we respond the same
Mm.
way repeatedly. And until we stop and realize, oh no. And we have to work towards creating different habits by picking up new tools and techniques that instill that. And you're never going to master it or come close to any of that if you don't, again, connect with your breath, hone it in, and skill it to become semi-masterful at certain things. um Nobody walks into the gym and masters every piece of equipment. That's all physical, but it's also very mental and very emotional too. But we really need to start working with the energetic side of it. So what would you suggest for that outside of the things that you've just shared?
Clearings is one thing. They're actually free on the website as well. And I will just go into ethics as well, because I did a remote viewing online course over the weekend that I taught, and it's actually available now. There's a plug, but it's really important to bring this up because this is what I was going to say just a moment ago, was spiritual ethics. It's really simple. How would you like to be treated in the same situation, that whatever it is that you're doing to another? Also boundaries, you could say, but it really comes down to ethics, especially with remote viewing, because I said to people, um, you know, uh, this has got the capability to be used for spying, which is why it was created, you could say, in the format that it was done. But there's also so much helpful benefits that can be had from something like that. So I think it's all about finding what works for you, but at least meditation and clearings to start out with. Like, there is a hardcore way that you could go about this now. For about 3.5 years, 8 to 12, 12 and a half hours a day, all I did was remote view and meditate. And it's really around 7 years now, split up over 15. But there was the first 3.5 years was straight. And one day I had a friend of mine that was a scientist said, do you want to go and do Vipassana? Which pretty much in a way was a breeze, because I was already doing it, not realizing, I was in isolation. So what happens in Vipassana, which there's all these Vipassana centers around the world that you can just give a donation. And what they've got is, it used to be, I think, a couple of months you'd go into silence. But they've got these opportunities where people can go, and I'm not endorsed by them or plugging them, but I'll get to my point with this. They've got these times that you can go there for 10 days. And when you go there, there's no eye contact, there's no phones, all your food's made for you, and it's basically meditating before sunrise until late at night. What happens is, usually 3 days into this, people have to go. They break down, they're crying, and it's because all the mind chatter and stuff that they've been putting off to deal with, and because nothing is taking their attention, it's right here, they've got to deal with it. We don't have time to deal with it. Even some of the yogis say 3 days of silence and darkness will turn anyone's pineal gland. My thing is, try to get anyone through 3 days of silence and dealing with their stuff. They could do stuff that's equivalent to an ayahuasca retreat or years of counseling like that in the right setting. But it's just sitting and being, and we can't seem to actually do that. The flip side is we're also here to be human. We can't be sitting on top of a, mountain in the Himalayas going, and, everything's going to be perfect. We need to find that equilibrium, that balance. But I think when you can sit and just be with the baggage or what you perceive as baggage, the ups, the downs, and actually just be with it and see it for what it is, really in the end an experience without attachment, which is hard because we attach to people, our jobs, our relationships. We're brokenhearted when things go because we attach to them when they come. We take things for granted. All that can be reunited with, as I say, in the rainbow light, when we go back to source and we're sitting within the middle of that rainbow light source. But there's blessings in what appears as those attachments, in lessons that you pull stuff out of you that you didn't even know you had until you went through it. So my thing is to see the silver lining in the situation you're in, but some inner sensitivity or practices or work, which for some, hey, it might be yoga, it might be going for a 20-minute walk, just a walk that's spiritual for them, that gets them to dial in. What is it for you? That's what I would say to people. What is it that gets you in what I call the zone? If you can figure that out, half of your crap's going to get sorted out when you go into that zone through ideas, epiphanies, concepts, and knowingness, which can be your higher self, your guides. But most of the time, I think we hit source in that and we merge with it. It's like when you drive for hours and you have missing time. You didn't have missing time unless, it was an abduction or something, but that time has flown by because you hit the zone. You can do it when you're doing dishes. You can do it when you're working out. That zone is where everything can be found. It's beyond human comprehension, but it comes through as a knowingness. The revelations, the ideas, the epiphanies, concepts, that's the answers to whatever it is that we seek.
Well, that is really powerful, but I'm very curious. Why no eye contact? If you went and if people were to go and do that and have and they can't get past 3 days, I get the silence.
Mm-hmm.
I get the food prepared, but why no eye contact? I
What
think I would
happens
find that harder than keeping my lips together.
What I found, excuse the language, I found it hard not pissing myself laughing because you just want to. There was one time we had a cigar craft that close, and I'm like this, and no one's looking at me, and I'm like, look at this. What it is. So the point of that, and what happens is, and in a way, you're sort of not meant to talk about it, but hey, we are where we are in 2026. What happens after 3 days when you've got no eye contact and no electronics and you're purely observing the breath in and out? You start to realize your vibration. So what happens is, the teacher said to me, because I levitated twice in there as well, and he said I was getting rid of my karma, which I don't know if that's what it was. It was only just a couple of inches off the ground. It felt like a lightning bolt went through me, but he said to me when we left, he goes, look, it's going to take you 2 or 3 days to adjust, like with driving, with just looking at things. So I get to a shopping center and I'm looking for a razor because I had like stubble or beard coming on. And no joke, it took me about 5 minutes to pick a razor. Like, I got to the razor section, there's like 10 choices. I'm trying to read the prices and you don't realize, and it sounds minimal, but after 10 days of that, you break down and you start to realize that all the signs and colors, and especially when you go into a supermarket or a shopping mall, all the signs and the price tags and the things jumping out, you don't realize how much that's happening 24/7 in the real world. When you sit in silence and you just follow the breath, what happens is you start to break down the five sense reality and you actually go beyond it. That's why. And it's at least 3 days when you hit the practice that you start following the sensation over the body. And what happens is you realize your foot's vibrating, your leg's vibrating, your stomach, your arm, and the whole thing's just vibration. But unless you can sit in silence, you're not going to realize that because you're bombarded with just reality. It's not that you're weak or you're not worthy. It's literally, we're being bombarded for a purpose. And it's to keep us away from that unboundedness that when you sit in that silence, you actually get to experience. For me, I actually went straight into it the first day, but it's because of the years of isolation and meditation that happened. And I sort of knew where it was going. I wasn't told where it was going. And again, I think about half of the place left by the third day. Not because they're weak. You saw people in tears. They just couldn't do it. It's, oh, cool. I'm going to be spiritual. I'm going to go and do this for 10 days and I'm going to tell everyone that I've meditated. No, it's like you're going to bring your crap up. You're going to deal with it and you go and do it again a year later. It doesn't matter. You're always going to have that. You're always going to have what we perceive as crap. It's how do you manage it? I used this analogy yesterday. Let's say, and I'm not meaning to be violent or anything, it's just an analogy I've got to use. Let's say I stabbed you, right? Now, you heal, but there's a scar, all right? Now, unless you're using laser technology or some fancy do stuff or some cream or whatever, no matter what you do, you're always going to have that scar, right? The analogy for this is no matter what trauma you've experienced in your life, no matter how much counseling you do, even if Yeshua, Jesus, came up to you and actually healed you,
Mhm.
you're at least going to be left with the memory of that trauma. That's the scar. That memory of an event is a scar. Unless we are able to deal with being the observer of that scar, what's happening is every time it's brought up, if you can't do that, you're now bringing the past event that caused trauma now into the present and you're living it now as much as you were back then because you're now identifying with it and it's now. We're not taught how to observe these scars and to see them as that. We can somehow, I've got scars on me, I can look at the scars and I'm detached. But we can't do that with the emotions. And that's what settings like that allow an opportunity for if one can take it. That's why when you sit in that, not only do you realize your vibration, but it gives you time to break down the five sense reality, stop identifying as a human, you go unbounded for a while and you realize this is actually me, not this. I've got a pinpoint of that awareness in here, experiencing here. And a lot of things can get sorted as well as experiencing multidimensional mind. So that's why, like, again, a long way around, the answer for you of why do you need that time, it actually takes time. You could have something almost equivalent with DMT or ayahuasca, but if my thing is we can do things naturally, right? And I think a lot of that's being abused. It does have its place, but there's no quick fix. If you're looking for something to go wham bam, thank you ma'am, and done, and I've done that, that is not gonna last. It's when you can sit in it, you can process it, and now observe it and not identify with it. When you've got that space and that energy, that's where leaps and bounds are made.
Yeah, again, we have to go inward and find our own dials, our own circuitry boards, and then figure out how to operate them and create our own manual, as you said, because you're never going to regulate to the outer world if you're not learning how to regulate from the inner world. And that's going to keep you in better homeostasis and, keeps the memory of the membranes starting to open and pour out things that we no longer need. And I think that's where a lot of people are right now that are getting flooded with all kinds of memories or situations where they just want to stop the bus. I'm getting off. I can't take this. I need a couple days of just rejuvenation and just quitting for a little bit. We don't have to exit the planet. We don't have to do anything dramatic or traumatizing to ourselves or to anyone else, because we have to control who we are. So lashing out at others and becoming the victim of why things haven't turned out the way they are, that's just going to take your vibration and plummet. It's going to be harder to come out of that. And you're going to lay your head on the pillow at night and go have regrets like, I probably shouldn't have said that the way I did, or those kinds of things. And I think that's where we are now, is people want to lay their head in the pillow and go, I had a great day. I did pretty well. I don't feel like I need to apologize for anything. It takes a while
And
to
it's a
get
good.
there.
It does, it does. And I will just say is you said homeostasis, it's really cool. So there's a meditation that I created from an experience and it's called the Rainbow Body Meditation, similar to what you do in Tibet, but it's different. So this meditation is free online, it's on Spotify and iTunes, but there's a visual guidance version on my YouTube. The reason I'm bringing this up is we had a practitioner of the Bio World device. And I actually saw recently that Joe Dispenza had this device used, which picks up how much light the body's emitting. And they've done years of study with this. Well, I had a practitioner here, and the technique is you breathe in or visualize that you're sitting within a ball of each color of the chakra. So you go from the red to the orange to the yellow to the green to the blue to the indigo to the violet, and you visualize that you're breathing in each color. Let's say the red energy 7 times in and out, and then you move up to the next color, and you move all the way up till you're in the white light with the rainbow hue. I did that 4 times to get a base level, and I got another 3 advanced meditators and people that do psionic work with me to do it. So we got 4 people, 4 times with four layers, or it might have been 3. And then on the 4th, what we did was we did the technique, and then we actually saw that everyone got into homeostasis. So when the chakras were checked out, which is the central, like the nervous points in the body originally, because these people were already advanced, everyone was sitting around 90%. Afterwards, even myself, my heart was up to 96% as an advanced meditator. My point with this is it doesn't have to be the meditation that I'm talking about. Even meditation can bring you back into homeostasis in just a prayer, a clearing from the way that I've been playing with this. And that's what we really need, is to be able to bring ourselves back into that. And it doesn't matter how advanced we are, we can always do better. We can always push towards more homeostasis, because the more work you're doing, we could say to some extent, the more responsibility we've got for ourselves, because we know more. So it was interesting for me to see that the evidence, and the video is actually up. People can watch it on YouTube. It's one of my recent videos where you can see that, you can hear the practitioner actually saying, and you can see what's actually going on from the results of that. And yeah, Joe Dispenza's done it with, he's doing some chakra meditation blessing thing, blessing the energy centers. Apparently there's very similar things with that as well that they're getting as results. Some universities are actually using this technology. If you go to the BioWell website, I'm not super informed on it. I just did it as an experiment, which I'm doing a lot of experiments at the moment. But the bottom line is, if you can bring yourself back into that homeostasis, you need to look after the mind, body, spirit connection.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be just one or the other.
Yeah, you know how you wear like a cardiac harness, around the chest to kind of monitor a baseline of what the heart's doing. I look at that invisibly around my body as one that just kind of lets me figure out how to be the best barometer I can be, engage my own calibrations, and then what signals am I getting that tells me I'm not as calibrated as I thought, and how to bring myself back to that. And I've just been kind of self-training myself for years for that, but I always have to bring it back, because then we get busy and we forget, right? And we get busy with life. And right now with 2026 starting, and we're about to move into, the fire horse, the snake got rid of a lot of stuff, but now we're moving into the fire horse. And I feel like many of us have been galloping really quickly right now before we've even entered that. So I've had to teach myself to slow down a little bit, as busy as I am. And how do I stay present while everything is really busy around me? And then other people's energies are nowhere near as stable as mine. How do I stabilize here so that I can just watch the little rabbit jump, the rabbit energy jumping around? And then, but how do I maintain my own calibration to the best of my ability? And so that's been kind of fun to play with. And I love what you've been saying about, don't look at it as good or bad. Look at everything as a lesson. Like, okay, well, I would try that differently. Or, oh, I don't know that I like that. Oh, I did like that. Let's try that more. And life is a lesson. And we've been taught from many doctrinations, that what's bad, what's evil, you've come in sinned and you need to cleanse your sins. And, that's all horseshit. We just got to get that out the window and say, you know what, I'm pure in the sense that I am right now, and I'm going to clear off anything else that I've collected up to this now moment. I'm going to run all this shit through the garbage disposal and disintegrate it, and then I'm going to be a new human in this moment.
It really is as simple as that. It like I say, don't try to overcomplicate it. Like, my thing is, if you can do your best now and know that you can always do better, that's really that matters on your part. Whether
Mhm.
it's how you deal with a certain individual, how you deal with a certain circumstance, um, catching yourself and refining yourself and just acknowledging what you're feeling, but also responding in a way leveling up for yourself as well as for others. That's part of the inner work, and it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It doesn't. No matter what stage one gets to, even if you look at the angelic kingdom, they've still got demons to deal with. There is
Mhm.
no level unless you're merging back with source, which even it's done this to refine itself and to learn and evolve. If we look at it from that perspective, it ain't going to stop. What would like to stop is the drama. There's always going to be lessons, and my thing with that is your choice, your decision, your action, bringing you closer to peace. It's as simple
Mhm.
as that.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm getting the analogy of, we drive on the same streets every day. We know where the potholes are. We know where those little what do you call them? Those metal things that go over manhole covers.
Yeah, yep,
We
yep,
know where they all are. And so once you know it, you know when you're driving, it's beep around it, up, down. And that's kind of how we're playing with our life is the roads that we're mostly driving on, figuring out how to master those. So why can't we do that with just our basic life of the connect the dots of where you are all day long? And most of us deal with the same people every day, right? Whether it's
yep.
family, friends, coworkers, the same grocery store people. Um, so we have to learn how to play that game closer to home and then start to expand it out and make it more fun.
And
So
just like we're changing, everyone's changing as well.
yes.
But it keeps you on your feet, and it makes it. You could look at it on a bigger level. Going, you even though things can sort of be the same canvas, and there could be similar things on that painting, we can direct what's on that painting each day. The characters. We're not responsible for others, but even our interpretation of characters, the interpretation of what we see the days before could be different from the day that we see, at the current time. Um, and I'm seeing this more with a lot of people, working with a lot of people. I'm seeing people are hitting this stage, and it comes up quite regularly of the message, what do you want to see on the canvas? Because a lot of people are like, what are my guides, this, that, the other? And it's like you're at a level that no matter what, my thing is always putting source first. But when people hit a certain stage and even other aspects are sort of pulling back, I always get, it's up to you what you want to see. What do you, like the analogy of, you got the blank canvas. What do you want to see on that? You're the artist. What do you want to see on that canvas, and what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and I look at myself as source. So I'm always like, all right, what would Source Sandy do in this situation? Should she respond to this? Like, and of course, everything is humorous to me. That's
Yep.
just my nature. So, could Sandy respond with her source self to this? And sometimes it's like, turn tail and run the other way. Yeah, this isn't where I'm supposed to be right now. I'm not supposed to comment on this. My 2 cents means nothing. Save it. It's my energy. I got to go over here with it. I think the more we get on this path of spirituality, the more we realize that it is our own individual journey, and we have to mentor what it is that we want to see, sense, and feel in the world. And it starts with us as a individual person before it can become a collective, before it can even become a group, or before it can even become two. And then the more you work on that, the more you'll find yourself around more people very similar to you, but you could still function very highly in groups of people who don't function the way you do,
100%. It's
so
being a
make it fun.
creator being in physical form. It's like that level. It's like your source here experiencing itself, but when with the illusion of separation, the illusion of limitation.
Yeah, just yesterday I realized, the last couple of weeks of doing some podcasts, I've been talking to my plants a little bit more, as I'm not a big green thumber. And so I've had a couple plants, and I've been trying to be nicer to them and just talk to them and give them a little love and making sure they got plenty of water and blessing the water as I'm giving it to them. And I realized the other day when I came in the house with some filtered water that I needed to set the water down in front of the two plants and let them calibrate the water for themselves so that they were more in sync when I poured it in, right? And it's
Yeah.
kind of what we do. Well, because I visualize the plants going, stop, what are you, you're drowning. Like, whoa. This again, they're warning, get away. But when we go into people's energy anywhere, whether there's actually a person there or they've been there, it takes us a few minutes to calibrate our own energy to first of all find that we're safe, right? And that we're okay. And before we can take action. And so it comes out in our behavior if we're not calibrating that energy. We become reactors, not responders, in a way that's more heart-centered.
Or even creators. There's a great thing that I saw with the heart math years ago, which is and I'll quote it the best that I can, but basically there was a study that was done where there was like a chaotic room, and you had a person go into that room that was doing heart brain breathing without anyone knowing. It's not like you could even tell. You could look at them and not even know they're doing it, and it changed the environment of the space, which shows the power of heart brain coherence, that you can go into a room where it's chaotic, kids are up and down, this, that, the other, and if you focus that much on it, even for 2 minutes, it can actually change the environment. So when we're in the heart, we can calibrate our environment really, and others can align with that without even knowing that.
Mhm.
Just like you could go into an argument or into a room where there's an argument, what does it do? You can feel it in your heart, like, oh, you can feel it. That it's like a hammer hitting the heart, like you're going down a roller coaster. We do that so often when we're going into public places and we don't know if people are upset or kids crying that they're not getting this toy, this, that, the other. But the more that we can calibrate ourselves, it can actually calibrate our environment as well.
Yeah, we don't realize we're getting individually, invisibly slapped constantly, constantly. And so if we don't get our physical, mental, and emotional and etheric body in alignment, it's going to come out in agitation, irritation, bad behavior, mood swings, lack of sleep, and it could be happen days later. And you
Yeah.
just don't attribute it to, oh, I kind of walked through some density. So Pete, tell us a little bit about some events you've got coming up, and if people can get in touch with you. Are you still doing private sessions? What's up with you?
Yeah, so people can go to gisanctuary.com or petermaxwellslattery.com. They go to the same website. I usually do probably 2 events a month. About to go into the third year. So here at Jai Sanctuary in Australia, we do self-mastery, remote viewing, initiating contact, a whole range of different workshops and events. But I also will be in Hawaii at the start of next month doing an event with James, and probably the middle of next year I'll be back in America doing some stuff up at the SETI Ranch as well. But there's online courses on the website as well, as people can book an appointment. I sort of go in and out of that depending if I'm traveling or what's going on. But yeah, there's books there available, and links to movies and a whole range of stuff. So uh, there's an educational spot as well on a lot of what we've talked about. So there's videos that I've done educating, showing slides on this, as well as clearing and prayer techniques. And also something that I do is free prayers every Saturday. So if people are going through a hard time, there's a form they can fill out. And on Saturdays that I've been doing for a few years now, I just go into a remotely. I don't see anyone unless they're at the sanctuary, and people assist me in the prayers. But it's also something I do as a way of giving back. So I just do prayer clearings that way for people that if they feel they need that assistance, they can go and fill out the form on the website.
Well, you are a very humble servant of source, as a source self human being here in this universe, and it is so appreciated. I know that I just was so like blown away at our session, and I think I had seen you a few times on YouTube, and Spirit was like, oh, you gotta get a session with that guy. And I'm like, okay, I will. And I did, and here we are a few years later doing an amazing podcast, and you're still going so strong and being a steward of the earth and everything that surrounds it. And I think I think you're being well rewarded for that because you've got such a happy tune in your heart, and your energy field just is, it exudes happiness
Thank you.
and it's at
Thank you.
peace. I can sense it, I can feel it, I can see it. So I just want to make sure that I say it.
No, thank and likewise, because everything you're doing, it's shining your light in this world, and through the podcast, in the stuff that you do behind the scenes, the stuff that people do see, what it does is it's pulling your weight. And even to some people, if they haven't got a podcast like yourself or aren't doing stuff like we are, just being the best version of them and being aware of that is them still pulling their weight. It's like you doing this helps me do what I'm doing and vice versa. If we all just do what we're guided to do from the heart, that's all of us working in sync, creating heaven on earth. So thank you for what you're doing too, Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. All right. Well, you know what? Keep It Spiritually Simple is going to end this episode, but Pete will be back. In the meantime, his links to his sanctuary, his .com, everything is going to be down in the description. And again, please like, subscribe, share, and hey, leave us a question. Who knows? Could be answered on the next episode. So stay put, but say goodbye, Pete.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.